meeting to order and ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Bodie.
Here.
Carberry Montgomery.
Here.
Kroll.
Here.
Rosendahl.
Here.
And Cacciatore is not here right now.
Correct. All right. Item 2 is approve the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Rosendahl.
Second.
Second by Carberry Montgomery. Discussion, roll call.
Rosendahl.
Yes.
Carberry Montgomery.
Yes.
Bodie.
Yes.
Kroll.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Item 3 is our regular agenda. We have one item, and that's to just get an update on the WRA, the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District, and the Urbandale Windsor Heights Sanitary Sewer District. John, are you going to kick us off, or who's starting us off?
I guess I'd be glad to kick everything off.
Right.
Just a little background here is back when we were working on the budget process, council had asked if they could get an update from the WRA related to, their operations and what kind of proposed improvements they would have at the plant. And then we're also looking for the sewer districts to kind of give an update on their operations and then kind of what impacts would be happening to their rates going into the future. So today we've got Scott Hutchins, who's the director for the WRA online. We've got Paul Dre, who's the district attorney for both of the sewer districts. We've got Matt Stoffel with PFM, who helps with the financial modeling of the districts. And then so Joe Sassatelli, one of the USSD district trustees, is also on today. So I think with that, we'll let Scott kind of kick off things and kind of run through the WRA process.
Yeah, thanks, John. If they would let me share my screen, I have a PowerPoint presentation that I could use. I don't know if anybody, I'll click on share, see if that works. Are you guys seeing my screen now?
We're seeing several things. Yep, just probably have to expand your presentation there.
Yep. All right, thanks, John, and thanks, Councilman Urbandale City Council. I appreciate coming to you and talked about the WRA. This will take about 10 or 15 minutes. I got some slides I can go through, and feel free to ask me any questions as you go through. Just a little bit about myself. I've been with the City of Des Moines for 35 years, and in all those years, I've been with pretty much with the WRA. The last 10 years, I've been the director of the WRA. My presentation, I'm just going to go a little bit about an overview of the WRA, and then some updates as far as the budget, some of the major projects, and then our facility plan, and some of our future things going forward. So I'll just dive in, and like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. So what is the WRA? We're a regional utility, the Des Moines Metropolitan Wastewater Reclamation Authority, made up of, since 2004, a 28E, 28F agreement. We have 18 member communities. We're governed by a 21 member board. We meet once a month. The City of Des Moines does serve as the operating contract, so all the employees that work for the WRA are City of Des Moines employees, including myself. In addition to the wastewater reclamation facility, which is the treatment plant down on Southeast 30th and Vandalia, the WRA owns and operates about 164 miles of regional sewers, as well as 7 pump stations and 9 equalization facilities. This is just an overview of our trunk sewer system. As you can see, it's very diverse around the metro. We go clear out to Waukee, up to Bondurant, Polk City, down to south of Norwalk, Cumming, serve the USSD, the UWHSD, and as you can see, all of Des Moines there. Like I said, the City of Des Moines is the operating contract. The operating contract, the term actually, it was a 20-year term. It ended in June 30th of 24. Right now, the City of Des Moines and the WRA board is working on an amendment to that agreement or a new agreement to reflect what actually has been going on lately. And we're anticipating that getting done here later this year. And then also we're working on a new WRA agreement, which kind of facilitates in with the new facility plan on how we go forward as far as funding all those projects and the needs and the growth and the rehab of the treatment plant and facilities. So that's going to be oncoming as well. The board and City of Des Moines jointly appoints the WRA director. I, as director, oversee and manage the day-to-day activities of the WRA. And as I said before, all the employees here at the WRA are members of the City of Des Moines Public Works Department. Right now, I'm going to go over the current fiscal year 2026 budget. This will take first on July 1 of 2025. There's three main categories of this budget, and this budget was approved last month at the WRA board meeting. There's O&M, operations and maintenance, debt service, and then the capital improvement plan. So the FY26, it was determined that we will collect $66 million from communities. Our net operating budget is about $13.2 million, which is offset with revenues and prior year credits. We actually underspend every year a little bit, and we give that money back as credits. And then we have revenues, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. The operation budget has remained relatively flat. The debt service for next year is $33.8 million, and that's the one that keeps continuing to go up to fund the projects. Other budget items that we're required to have of $19 million, excuse me. We have to have operating reserves and also our renewal and replacement budget, but we have to have certain amounts of reserves in our budget and in our system to make sure if anything happens that we're able to pay all our bills and pay what we need to. Our capital improvement plan budget for this year is about $110 million, just shy of $110 million. And each community pays their allocation of that budget through a 3-year moving average. That is something that the technical committee approves every year. And we have many flow meters out in the system that monitor flow. And then that flow is averaged on 3-year average. And then that flow is divided up amongst the member communities. Here's a slide that kind of breaks down the budget. As you can see, almost 51% is debt service, 29% is the other budgeted items, and then 20% is the operations and maintenance portion of the budget. Here's a slide that just shows everybody's share of the pie of the budget. As you can see there, I highlighted the USSD is about 6.9%, and then right above that is the UWHSD. And as you can see, Des Moines still makes up a large portion of the pie. It used to be over 50%. It no longer is that. As the suburbs continue to grow, Des Moines' share of that pie continues to shrink. Des Moines isn't growing, obviously, as fast as some of the other communities of members of the WRA. Just some quick budget facts about the FY26 budget. As I said, the community collections has increased almost $7 million from last year, and a lot of that is because of the new projects coming online to make sure that we are growing the facilities like the communities are growing. We need to make sure we're ready for that growth. And then also, our plant is almost 40 to 45 years old, runs continually. It's a 24/7 operation, so we need to continue to rehab, just not here at the treatment plant, but we need to make sure that our conveyance system and our sewers are ready to go and in good maintained conditions, so we don't have any overflows and that we can handle all the flow that is coming from the communities that we serve. And as I said before, we have revenue offsets, and then we have also revenues that come into the budget. We have a hauled waste program. We collect hauled waste that comes in to tankers from all over the central Iowa and Iowa itself. We have about 60 tankers that come in a day. We charge them a tipping fee to dispose of that hauled waste. And also we have a biogas program that generates about $60 million or $6 million a year. And I have some additional slides later on to highlight the RNG system. Debt service increased a little bit from 2025 of almost $1 million. The small CIP has increased the most. These are our smaller projects, but we have a lot of these. These are projects that rehab existing equipment and mechanisms and other things here at the plant. It was decided by the finance committee that they would rather collect cash and pay for those through cash instead of borrowing. And so we continue to increase that amount that we have every year, the small CIP. And just for reference, the WRA community's percentage of their sanitary sewer bill is about, and it ranges anywhere from like about 35 to almost 80%, depending on which communities you are. So it's all across the board there. So just a little bit about staffing here at the WRA. We have about 110 folks here at the WRA, and we continue to evaluate that on a year-to-year basis. In FY24, we didn't add any new positions. In 25, we had four new positions. Those were in the maintenance department because we continue to have needed maintenance in all our facilities. And then this year, we're proposing a technology manager, an information technology manager to look after. Right now we share that position with the city of Des Moines. We need somebody full-time looking out for WRA IT needs. And so that position was added. And then the finance procurement clerk is being filled from existing unfilled positions. This is just a swap out of another position that we had as a procurement clerk and a finance accounting person. So the capital improvements budget goes from 2026 currently to 2031. The debt limit in our WRA agreement is $675 million. The new debt limit that is being proposed by the WRA is $975 million. We're going to raise that debt limit, and that's what the Finance Committee has recommended in order to continue to build the projects we need to build to be ready for the flow and rehab the facility. Current outstanding, but we're going to have to raise that debt limit. And then the current 6-year CIP is $413 million, with about, like I said before, about $110 million estimated for the current year. The capital improvement plan addresses, numerous things, like I said before, growth, the new facility plan projects, which highlights the WRA growing for the next, it's a planning period for 20 to 25 years. So we're on top of that. And we can't sit on our haunches and wait for the growth to happen and then build things, because that's too late. We need to be out in front of that. Also, the nutrient reduction strategy for phosphorus and nitrogen, we're proactive on that. We're going to have a phosphorus recovery project that we're building, and I have some more slides on that as well. And then just renewal and replacement. And then also we have a consent decree. About 12 years ago, we entered into a consent decree with the DNR and the Attorney General's office to remove all our combined sewer overflows in the system. And we've been doing that systematically. We have 2 more CSOs that are going to be eliminated here at the end of the year, and then we will fulfill the terms of the consent decree. So there's just a list of some of the major CIP projects: the Ingersoll Run, final clarifier, phosphorus, effluent pumping, and the site security. I have a little bit more on those going forward. And then the small capital projects are smaller in nature, but they're mostly renewal and replacement projects. And there's several of those that we have ongoing. We're doing a new site security project, which Homeland Security, we are a essential asset to the community, so we need to make sure it's secure. So there's certain things that we need to upgrade: fencing, other things, doors need to be electronically locked, and a lot of cameras, and then also a new entrance so we can get our hauled waste tankers in and out of the facility more readily. So we're doing a new entrance, some new stuff on our boilers, electrical improvements on our transformers. Those are wearing out. They're original. They've been here about 40 years. Our gas membrane, which was new about 12 years ago, but it's end of its useful life. We need to replace that. And then our sludge processing equipment, our rotary drum thickeners replacement, those run continually, and they're about 20 years old and need to be replaced. So this is the facility plan document that we've talked about. This was approved by the WRA board in December. On the left, it shows the facility plan update for our treatment plant. And then it shows kind of the cost estimates of work needed to be done, broken out into 5-year increments. And this is to make sure that we are ready to go and continue to grow and be ready for that growth. And also the regulatory requirements that continue to be more stringent as we go forward. Make sure we're meeting our EPA and DNR permit requirements. And then on the right side is the conveyance system. We need to make sure all the conveyance sewers and the regional sewers are up to spec, and that they can handle all the flow that is needed coming from the communities, that we don't have overflows, and that we're also ready for the growth that is planned to occur. So like I said, the facility plan, it identifies capacity needs, level of service expectations. The drivers are the aging infrastructure, community growth, and then our footprint. That was one thing I didn't mention. We're a very narrow, long site. We're about several hundred yards wide, but we're about 1.5 miles long. We're growing out of space, so we need to get more and more things into a more confined space. So we need to move some things around and remove personnel facilities to some property that we just bought, so we can have space for the actual treatment here at the WRF site. And then the conveyance system, as I said, the capital planning, we need to. It's going to go into the 2040s, if not longer. And as I said, the WRA board approved this in December of 2024. So the debt projections, as we said, and maybe Matt Stolfo can get into this later a little bit. He's been working with the WRA and several member communities. But as you see, these are costly projects and they continue to go up. The graph on the right shows a pretty steep increase. Realistically, that flattens out as we go because sometimes projects don't happen as quickly as we anticipate. So that probably get a little bit flattened out. But as you can see, we continue to get closer to that 675 debt limit. That's why the WRA agreement is being redone. We do a new facility plan about every 10 to 12 years. And then when we do one of those, we also amend the WRA agreement so we can figure out how we're going to pay for those and how that's all going to be divvied up. But I just wanted to show the projected debt and projected that graph there on the right. So I'm just going to go through some of the major CIP projects that some of you might know about if you've gone downtown Des Moines. This is the Ingersoll Run outlet sewer. The total project is about $36 million. It's going to be completed here later this year. Phase 1 and Phase 3, the red and the purple are already completed. We're working on Phase 2 currently. This is a project that if you were downtown Des Moines on MLK going down to the Cubs or down to the Science Center, we had the whole lane, the south or the north lane of MLK completely tore up. As you can see, it was a very disruptive project, but it got done ahead of schedule, believe it or not. We reopened that 6 months early compared to when the contract was available. So we were glad to get that project. It was a big disruption for anybody traveling in downtown Des Moines. The next project is the Berthlin Pump Station. This is part of our consent decree. It's down by the Berthlin Marina. The picture on the left is the old Berthlin Pump Station. That needs to be rehabilitated. It doesn't have the capacity that we need. So here's this project is now complete, but this was pictures during construction. As you can see, a kind of unique thing architecturally. We worked with the neighborhood and to get this to fit in with the old and new of that area. As you can see where it looks like we bricked up old windows, but that was by design. That's a brand new building, but that's what the architect and the neighborhood agreed to. So we made it fit into the area down there. And that's just the internal components of it with the pumps and the bar screen. This is a final clarifier improvement project. So all those round tanks you see on the left side, those are final clarifiers. Those have been in operation since the mid-1980s. The internal mechanisms, as you see here, these are the new ones. These run continually, and they just flat out wore out after 40 years of continuous work. So those all needed to be rehabbed and redone in order to make sure that we continue to process the wastewater like we need to. WRA Effluent Pumping, this is a project that's partially funded by the Flood Hazard Mitigation Grant Program that the state had, and we were in conjunction with the city of Des Moines and received quite a bit of money for this project. So this is when the river is up, we still need to be able to get our treated wastewater out. And in the past, we've had trouble doing that and it backs up into the system. So when the river levels are high, we'll still be able to get the treated wastewater out. That's what this project will do. This project just was bid and is just getting started and will be completed in 2028. I mentioned the phosphorus recovery project earlier. This is a project that's part of the nutrient reduction strategy. It helps remove phosphorus from the waste stream. As you can see in those pictures, the top picture, that's what happens when phosphorus solidifies in our pipes and causes problems and just keeps shrinking down our pipes. We actually have an additive that we add currently to the wastewater that helps break down that, but the phosphorus recovery project will completely eliminate that and will help us when phosphorus does become part of our permit levels. And we'll pelletize the phosphorus, and we'll get a little bit of revenue, about $900,000 a year from doing that. This project is going to bid later this year, and it's about a 3-year completion. This is just an overview of what the project will look like. This is what I talked about, the new site security project and new entrance. If you, my pointer works here up in this area up here. This is where the new entrance, the old entrance is. The new entrance is down here. This is so people can come in. Before, if you weren't allowed to come in, you still had to come in and go out. This way, you can. If you're not allowed to come in, we circle you back around and you park here until somebody can let you in and out. And it's an area where our big tanker trucks can park there and be staged if needed. So we have sewer lining projects. So some of our sewers of the WRA system were built in the 60s and 50s and are starting to run out of their useful life. So instead of going through and tearing those completely out and rebuilding them in place, what we do is we just line that sewer. So we have several projects for the next through FY28. We've been lining every year a little bit of each one of those projects, each one of those sewers, and we continue to do that. So the Renewable Natural Gas Project is a project where we take our biogas and clean it up to natural gas grade and inject it into the Mid-America pipeline. This project was completed about 3 or 4 years ago, and we have a 10-year contract with Shell Energy to purchase all our renewable natural gas. And we generate currently about $6 million of gross revenue, and we're hoping to have that. The project costs about $20 million, and that will be a 4 to 5 year payback on that project. This is just showing you the inner workings of that. As you can see, we used to flare a lot of gas because we overproduced and we couldn't use it in our engines or in our boilers. But now we use all that gas, we clean it up, and then we inject it. And we did a financial analysis. It's better for us to sell all our gas because of the environmental attributes and the money we receive for those, the green credits basically, and then buy back all the gas we need to run in our treatment plant. It's financially, it's a benefit to us. So here's a project that's directly impacting Urbandale. This is called the WRA Joint and Common Trunk. This is just an overview of the project. I got there's 3 phases. The green is what is existing, and then the red and the orange and the purple are new. It starts down here on the lower right. That's 63rd and Railroad in Des Moines. It comes up through. It goes by by Colby Park. It's not in Colby Park, but it's near Colby Park and Walmart, and then dips into the Clive and follows the Clive Greenbelt, and then ends up here in Urbandale, up I think this is 142nd and Douglas. So there's a more refined showing its impacts on Urbandale. This project is ongoing. We've had one meeting with the neighbors and with the people that are for this project, a public meeting in August of 24. There's still going to be 2 or 3 more. We're in the design phase right now. We haven't even started easement negotiations, but it's a very, it's going to be a large project. And just to go back, we are starting in the red section because that's where the sewer is needed the most. And as you can see, as we move downstream, we usually build sewers from downstream to upstream, but we're doing this one the other way because the need is up at the red section first, and then we'll continue to go down. This is a very long project. We're just getting started. Hopefully to bid this next or later this year, get started next year on the red phase, and then continue on down until about 2030 when the project will be complete. The reason for the project is that sewer was constructed in the 90s and it needs rehab. We're leaving the existing sewer in place. We're paralleling that sewer. It's a very challenging area because of where we're building that, but it is needed. Large stakeholder audience. We're getting out in front. We've worked with all the communities. John Larson, we've worked with him on this, and as well as we have Snyder and Associates, who is our consultant doing this project. So we'll continue to work with all jurisdictions to make sure that this is as little of impact as possible, but it's a large diameter sewer, and there's going to be some impact and some major disruption as we go through there. This is kind of the schedule and the cost of the project. This is part of the the existing facility plan, existing projects. This project's been on the timeline for a long time, and it's going to continue to be pushed back because it wasn't needed until this time. So as growth continued to the northwest part of the WRA service area, it is now needed, and that's why it's being constructed at this time. This is just a list of the WRA teams. We have approximately, I said, 113 total employees, and we have it's broken down in those divisions there. Just a few things, the major activities for 2025 for the WRA. Like I said, we are restating the WRA agreement, which will outline how the facility plan will get paid for and going forward, and changing a few things because it's a 20-year document, and we need to change some things in there, as well as the operating contract. We're hoping to get that finished by the end of the year. As I stated before, the conveyance system and the WRF facility plan was approved in December. We just got issued our 5-year NPDES permit from the DNR last month. We've been working on that for a long time. And then also design and construction of many of our WRA capital improvement projects. Some things for people from Urbandale or the Urbandale Council to remember: the renewal of the operating agreement, facility plan implementation, updating the agreement, completion of the projects and the consent decree, and then, of course, the big one that is directly impacting Urbandale is the joint common trunk project. That's all I had as far as my presentation. I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Hi, Scott. This is Bridget Montgomery. Thank you for your incredibly thorough and informative presentation. Could you talk a little bit more about anticipated changes to this operating agreement with the city of Des Moines as they become a minority, not a minority member, I guess, not the primary 50% user of the WRA?
Yeah, so the agreement, the original agreement when we formed in 2024 was a 20-year agreement. And like I said, that agreement is now the term has expired, and it continues to go on 1-year terms until we do a new one. So there's just some things when you do an agreement from 20 years ago, everybody thinks they know what's going on and can foresee the future. It's basically going back and kind of just showing what we actually do. And then it's also kind of giving the director position a little bit more discretion as far as dealing with the WRA board, instead of having the City of Des Moines city manager or the public works director involved as much with some of the, having more lookout for the WRA. And if there's any conflicts of interest, they're kind of doing a process that would show what that all means and how we can work through those. If the board, the City of Des Moines, has difference of opinion on something particular, which doesn't happen very often, that there's a mechanism on how to resolve those. And then also some of the shared cost of things. And then just like I said, just a way of doing things. There is some benefit to both parties because we use the City of Des Moines when we have things out here at the treatment plant. When we do some major cleaning projects, they have Vector trucks that we use for them, and then we can build back, but we get a pretty good price for those. And so there's other shared things. And if we ever get into an emergency situation, the Public Works Department of the City of Des Moines would help out, and they're right here. So there is some things that a shared benefit there. But that's pretty much the term of the next WRA operating contract won't be 20 years. It'll be something less. I think one side wants 10 years, and the other side wants 20 years. So I guess it's going to probably be somewhere in the middle. But I would guess that it's going to be closer to a 10-year. Some of the things that have changed is we used to use City of Des Moines Legal Department for everything, and now the WRA board has made the determination that they want their own legal counsel, and we use Bradshaw Dickinson to be our legal counsel. That's one thing that happened in the last few years. So that's kind of a move, and that will be reflected in the new operating contract as well. So that's kind of the gist of it. is there anything else in particular that you'd like to know?
Well,
or-
I really appreciate the detail there. I guess where I'm coming from is a little bit of skepticism as the Urbandale's representative on the DART Commission, and figuring out how to be equitable with the city of Des Moines has been a major point of contention over the last year or so. So I just, you guys seem to run and do good work. I mean, but
Right.
I just want, if we're in the process of negotiating this agreement, I want to make sure that, you know, the non-city of Des Moines folks like Urbandale are getting, you know, what they pay for as well. And I mean, it sounds like we are, and you're acknowledging the changing nature of our community growth. So I guess that's just where my question was coming from. And, you know, I trust the folks that we have negotiating.
Yeah, one of those folks, one of the main negotiators is E.J. Giovanetti, who obviously was a Urbandale mayor several years ago, and also represented that area with the Polk County Board of Supervisors. He's still very much involved, and so is Jody Smith from the city of, he used to be the city of West Des Moines finance director. Those are people that have history going way back. And I've also been involved with the CIWW reconfiguration as well. So they have vast knowledge of the inner operations of things and how that works. So they're tough negotiators, and they understand what everybody kind of wants and needs. So it's been, and I've been working with them as well on this. So it's been good.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, and my answering my question. And I guess I have another question. We are in unprecedented regulatory federal changes right now, and I'm just wondering if you're seeing impacts of the change in administration, and also if there's federal money that comes to the WRA that may be in question.
Yeah, the only, as far as, I'll answer the last portion first there. We use the state revolving loan fund, and as long as that continues to be supplemented, we're okay. And those, you know, those funds are basically they're self-sufficient funding, and maybe Matt can actually jump in there too, but that seems to, they're not touching that program currently. The thing as far as what we're seeing is some of the, I'm sure you've all heard about PFAS in the news for drinking water side, and that's starting to come to play on the wastewater side. So that's something we continue with our national organizations that we belong to keep our nose on the grindstone to make sure that we are out in front of that, and continue to look at the legislation up on the Hill. There was several things that were a concern of ours, but one of the bills didn't make it out. The two bills that we were really concerned about was one about PFAS testing, and then also the raising of the sanitary sewer rates by only 2%. Those didn't make it out of committee and didn't make it to the funnel this time. So, but there's going to be more to come on that. And we went up to the Hill and actually talked against at the subcommittee level on the 2% rate increase for sanitary sewer rates. So as far as the regulatory side, we just negotiated a new 5-year NPDES permit, and we got pretty much everything we wanted. It didn't change a whole lot from before. We are going to see probably nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, and that's why we're getting ready for that with all these new projects, but that's not in our permit. We don't have limits on those yet, but we can see that coming sometime down the road. Maybe not 5 years, but maybe 10 years down the road.
Thanks for those answers.
No problem. And I'd like to just tell you folks, if you ever have any questions, my contact information was on the slide there, and John has my contact information as well, and it's on the WRA. Feel free to contact me, email, call me, or whatever, if you ever have a question about any of that.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question? I see that the Western Urbandale is going to be torn up again to install this. Is that going to impact the bike trails? We received quite a bit of pushback and conversation the last time we had the bike trails torn up, so I just want to be prepared for what might come.
I'm going to have to, I believe they probably will, but I'm probably going to have to get back to you on that. I will talk. Matter of fact, they just had this morning another design meeting, but I will pass that on and I will get that
Scott,
to.
Scott, if you'd like, I could answer that a little bit.
Okay, cool.
I've been more involved with Snyder. This one's maybe a little more different than the other projects we've done with our sewers. There's not nearly as much in park ground. A lot of it's more on private property. So again, there'll be some impacts to trails, but we've been working with parks and getting everything kind of where I think it works best for the city. But again, just keep in mind as a whole, it's not running predominantly through park ground like our other projects had. It's a lot more on private property, and that's where they're working through getting additional easements and things.
Right, thank you.
I guess, John, thank you, Amy. I'm watching on my phone, so I didn't pick that up. We haven't had trail access on the, Walnut Creek Trail there along the creek, between 156th or not along 156th, between Douglas and Meredith for a couple of years. It's been torn up. So is that going to open up soon for good, or are some parts of it, because people are, reaching the end of their ability to tolerate a project, I think, with that particular project.
Trying to see if I understand correctly. Are you talking the trail that goes west of 156th over to Clive?
Well, it goes, east-west from Alice's Road, it was torn up basically for Clive, and then the Waukee sewer, to the best of my understanding, but we're going on maybe year 3.
Right. That Clive also was doing a stream bank project. So again, the Urbandale portion is, quote, done. It's just closed west in Clive because Clive still needs to finish up all the stuff they were doing over there.
So will this project that Amy brought up impact that part of the trail that's in Urbandale?
No, this starts in the park just northwest of the roundabout, and then continues on down to Hickman Road.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, because I know people are looking forward to that trail being open again.
All right. So conclude the discussion on WRA. All right. Well, thank you, Scott, for stepping in today. Appreciate the presentation. So
You're welcome. Like I said, if you ever need anything else, let me know.
all right, very good. All right, we'll move on to the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District and the Urbandale Windsor Heights. So who wants to start that off?
I can start that off. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for allowing us the opportunity to come speak with you and the invitation to come speak with you. I'm going to plan to give a brief history and then turn it over to Matt Stoffel, who's with PFM and working with the districts in regard to helping us with our budgets as well as our sewer rate increases, which I think will be of interest to you and why we're looking to make some of the adjustments we are as we move forward. Some of in part in light of just some of the things you've heard from Scott in regard to the plans at the WRA, as that's a significant part of both of the budgets. Just a little history in regard to the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District, Urbandale Windsor Heights District. So the Urbandale Windsor Heights District is made up of Windsor Heights and some of the eastern part of Urbandale. And then the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District is the remainder of Urbandale and everything west, and basically is part of any expansion typically that occurs in Urbandale. In regard to those, our distinction with the WRA, the Urbandale Windsor Heights District is in regard to its basically a core member of the WRA. And for right now, the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District is an expansion, considered an expansion community of the WRA. And really the impacts of that is in regard to what parts of some of the projects are the two districts paying for. That may or may not be changed in the upcoming new agreements to be presented as they decide how to pay for some of these projects. The Urbandale Windsor Heights District is the older of the two districts. It was formed essentially back in 1946 and has been in existence since then, sort of incorporating some of the private sewer systems that existed, and then working through some of the sanitary sewer issues between the city of Des Moines and Windsor Heights, and then eventually into Urbandale. The Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District came into existence in 1962. And basically, at that time, there was a Beaver Creek treatment plant that was still in existence. It ran that Beaver Creek treatment plant and the sanitary sewers in the city of Urbandale that weren't in as part of the Urbandale Windsor Heights District. I've been with the sanitary sewers roughly since 1994 as their legal representative, and since 98 pretty much as their primary legal representative. It has no employees, so we basically hire professionals in regard to, we have a district engineer, Veenstra and Kim. Now Bob Veenstra typically acts in that capacity, but in large part we work with the city of Urbandale. And so John and his team from Urbandale, we have a very close relationship with in regard to having basically a contract between the city of Urbandale and the districts to provide much of our services in regard to routine maintenance and service projects. And John and his team in the city of Urbandale do a great job. And recently, a couple of years ago, the Urbandale Windsor Heights District also joined in a 2080 agreement whereby Urbandale provides the services for that district as well. And so it's really been a great partnership and relationship between the sanitary districts and the utilization of the city of Urbandale, and working closely in regard to providing those services for the residents that we both serve. In regard to how we make some of those things work, I know, like I said, the expansion typically occurs in the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District. And so when Urbandale annexes property, the district also annexes those properties into the district. And we provide the services, sanitary sewer services, then for those residents. The sanitary sewer districts are basically an exclusive entity, municipal entity set up under Iowa Code Chapter 358 with the sole purpose of providing sanitary sewer to the residents within our districts. We have separate taxing and bonding capacity that allows us to, and I think when the history of the district started with the city of Windsor Heights and the city, or the town of Windsor Heights at the time, and the city of Urbandale, it basically allowed them to do projects without having it count against their bonding capacity, because the district had its own bonding capacity, which allowed it then to do the sanitary sewer projects without counting against the cities who were building streets and other municipal projects, capital improvement projects that they had. And so it really has been, I think, a really good relationship between the districts and the communities. And I know we've been part of the WRA. I know Scott was mentioning some of those dates. I have not been as active in this round of the 2080. I was very active in the 2004 and the 2014 renditions of the 2080 agreement that governed the WRA. So been very familiar with the process and how that all works. And we've had, I think, a good relationship throughout with the WRA in regard to how the districts have worked within those communities as well. So I don't know if you have any other historical questions or questions about the district, but I thought I'd turn it over to Matt Stoffel to sort of talk about the rates and some of the upcoming changes we have in regard to our budgets that Urbandale Windsor Heights approved its budget at its last meeting, and the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District is set to have its public hearing and approve the budget at its meeting this afternoon. So Matt, do you want to sort of provide a little background as to what the financials are and how the districts looked at those and the rates, the rate changes coming up?
Yeah, and I'm going to try to share my screen here as well. Can you all see my screen? Paul, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. So yes, my name's Matt Stuffel. I'm a municipal advisor with PFM. We advise the WRA as well as Urbandale Sanitary Sewer and Urbandale Windsor Heights. And so we've been working with Urbandale Sanitary Sewer since 2020. And then we've been working with Urbandale Windsor Heights just since 2000 and just last year. We were hired by Urbandale Windsor Heights. PFM has been working with WRA since its formation, and so I personally have been working on that account since 2012. So this is, the participating communities, and really this is the credit presentation that we gave to Moody's and S&P last April, I guess it was, in anticipation of the bond issue. It's got a lot of really good information, comparative information between the communities, and so I thought I'd just start with this. In the rating agencies, they really look to Des Moines, West Des Moines, Ankeny, and Urbandale as the four kind of key components. On the strength of those four credits really determines the strength of the WRA, because they make up the lion's share of the WRA. And so you can see Des Moines is at 43%, West Des Moines is at 12.8%. Ankeny's at 11.5, and then Urbandale's at 7. And so that those four communities, this goes in the official statement that we do for the investors in the WRA bonds. And I think this is a really interesting chart, because it essentially looks at the rates and charges. And this was as of April of last year, so it doesn't have any rate increases since then, but it was the most recent one I have. But then we compare that to a percent of median household income, and you can see that the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District and Urbandale Windsor Heights are some of the lowest rates of the WRA members. And then this is the cash position, so really strong cash position for all of these utilities. And this is really important because the WRA doesn't have its own credit per se. It really looks to the underlying entities, because it doesn't have what you would have as traditional rate covenants when they pay their bonds. And then this is the coverage calculation. So this shows, gross system revenues, operating expenditures, debt service, local debt service, and then the coverage. And so this last column here, anything above 1.25 is kind of considered investment grade. Once you start getting 1.5 to 2 times coverage, you're starting to talk about like a AAA type bond rating where you're as good as you can get. So you can see here where a lot of communities have above 2. That's really important, especially as it relates to Ankeny, City of Des Moines, West Des Moines, and Urbandale Sanitary Sewer. So when we present this information to Moody's and S&P, these coverages matter. It's essentially the performance of the underlying sewer districts and cities' sewer funds is what establishes the credit for the WRA. So that's just, this is just the presentation we gave last year. So I thought that would be interesting information to share. And Scott showed this graph. Oops. I lose a lot of sleep over the steepness of this near-term line. There's a lot of debt coming, and to keep utilities affordable over the long term, we've got to figure out how to make that not as steep as it is right now. And so part of that is we analyze every year, what debt should we do as 30-year debt? What debt should we do as 20-year debt? We're trying to push more projects to cash. And so every community's got to be able to afford that. But if we cannot continue to bond for every single $5 million project out there, we've got to be able to fund some of those with rates and charges. And so, we work very closely with WRA. Then we model everything. I have my WRA model goes out to 2070, 2076. And so all of the future projects, all of the debt service coming, and we update this year to year. Typically in December and January, we have a lot of detailed discussions with the finance committees, and as communities are starting to work on their upcoming fiscal budgets. But you can see the WRA increased the budget this year 12.4%. And then next year, and this was in January, next year we had projected 18.2% increase for the fiscal 2027. And so, I've been working on this, trying to smooth that out to fund the facility plan based on the guidelines that the Finance Committee has recommended. It's looking like WRA budget is going to go up about 10.4% every year for the next 5 to 7 years. And so, that's just part of the story, because, the way the flow works is flows are measured annually, and then the 3-year average is updated. So if it doesn't matter how much one community grows or how much that individual community's flow changes, it matters how that flow changes relative to the rest of the system. So a lot of the flows change based on the weather pattern, so how much it rains in the metro. And if it rains more in the south and less in the north, you see that show up in the flows. And so newer systems don't have as much rainwater getting in them. Older systems have a lot more I&I. That shows up in the flows. So you can see here, this is the what was included in the budget packet this year. Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District by 1.3%. Urbandale Windsor Heights grew by 4.8%. So on top of the WRA budget growing 12.4%, the allocation of that budget between the communities gets updated on an annual basis. And so you see that show up, and I'll just go back to this one here. The WRA was 12.4, but if I go to Urbandale Sanitary Sewer, its budget didn't go up 12.4 for 26. It went up 9.7 because its flows actually reduced. Whereas if you look at Urbandale Windsor Heights, it went up 21.9% because its flows increased. And so, I like to say everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And the allocation of the WRA budget is not a simple exercise. And so there's a lot of moving pieces. There's just a lot to take into account. So if I go back to, I'll start with Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District. We maintain these performas, and so we work with Paul and the district. They provide us their budget. We build in all of the things we know about the WRA, and then we start to build out, okay, what does that look like in the future? And so one of the things that, there's a lot of information here. I probably don't have time to go over everything, but, the average bill for, and these aren't finalized yet. This is what I had presented, I think, January 21, I presented to the Sanitary Sewer District as they were preparing for the 2026 budget. But the average bill for an Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District in fiscal 25 for somebody who uses 4,100 gallons. So that's based off of the average. We get the billings from Urbandale Water is about $23.71. And I would tell you the normal range for other members of the WRA is somewhere between $40 and $65. So Urbandale Sanitary Sewer is way on the low end of the sewer rates. Now, what complicates that is that you also have the district also has a property tax, right? So that's not comparing apples to apples if you just take the sewer bill. So if you look at a residential property, $300,000 residential property, they're paying about $29.67 in this current calendar year or fiscal year to fund the sewer district, $78 in addition to the monthly sewer bills. So, we model that, going out here. And so we've built in 5% rate increases, and those 5% rate increases are really driven by the WRA debt that's coming. So the debt payment for Urbandale Sanitary Sewer And so one thing that's unique about the sewer district, the WRA, is that debt of the WRA is actually just debt of the communities, which is different than how Central Iowa Water Works is set up. It's different how DART is set up, or Metro Waste Authority. WRA is more of a pass-through, a clearinghouse. It collects revenues $1 for dollar from the communities. And so in anything it over collects or under collects, it has to adjust in an upcoming budget. So if it over collects in any given year, it credits it back to those communities from who it collected it from, based on those prior flows back into the budget. And so there's a lot of credits, there's a lot of adjustments that happen on the WRA. But this $2.8 million is projected to go to $5.8 million on just this 5-year horizon. And that's where the pressure is on all these rates, because, we really need to target a 1.1 times debt service coverage ratio for the city of Urbandale, based on, or not the city, but the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District, based on the 2080 requires a 1.1. And there is a provision in there that you can use cash, but the problem with that is that if you start using cash too much, eventually your cash runs out, and then your rates are really, really off, and so we try to stay ahead of this. Now, the district doesn't have to increase these. You can see these last 3 years, they haven't increased rates at all. In fiscal 23, 24, and 25, there were no rate increases as it relates to the actual sewer bills. So, we're modeling this, we're trying to provide the district in the board of the district the information that they need, to make decisions. The district does have 2 general obligation debts that they issued primarily to fund the expansion that went up when Grimes was connecting to the WRA. I think the project was to oversize some of those sewers in order to build future capacity so that they didn't have to come back in the future and do that. And so we worked with the district when they issued those GO bonds, and currently they're using some of their cash to pay for that. So they're not collecting all of that debt service. They're not collecting the property taxes even to cover that. They're collecting about, 40 cents on the dollar, and then they're using sewer revenues to buy down some of that tax burden. So, the district looks at this on an annual basis and tries to balance between the coverage, the cash position, and then the impact to the ratepayers and the taxpayers. So it's kind of my overview on the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District. What questions do you have for me on that?
So if I'm understanding correctly, the rate, like there's no way to really get ahead of some of the collection, like basically there's no way to get ahead of some of the increases by like making them slower. Like the rate kind of has to hug how debt service is going to look.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion at the WRA about what if a few communities want to pay cash and not all of the communities want to borrow for their portion of the project. And there is a mechanism to do that, and we have went through some excruciating detail on what that looks like. Nobody has decided to do that yet, but even if you pay for your portion of the project in advance, we still have to reconcile your changes in flows over the course of that whole bond issue. So if one community can't afford to pay for it in cash, then WRA has to borrow. And then, so it's, we are trying to, and I'll show you back on here. So this R&R reserve, which has primarily just been for like small CIP, small projects like repair and replacements, to try to keep this debt burden down, we've been trying to intentionally increase this. And you can see here, this even got adjusted as the budget got finalized up to 18 million, but we're trying to start increasing this cash collection so that we can fund more projects with cash to really, because if you look at the 17 communities that are members of the WRA, I bet 13 of them, the primary thing driving their rates is the coverage on the debt service. And some communities are trying to keep a 150 to a 170 so that they can preserve the ability to go out and borrow for trunk sewers and use sewer revenue debt. But there's, you know, the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer has a very strong cash position. You know, and we've talked about, do we pay off the GO bonds early? Do we pay off, you know, what should we pay something off? But money's earning money at the moment, so it's hard to pay off, you know, 1% bonds if your money's earning 4% in the bank, you know. And so it's something that I know the district looks at every time they reinvest their CDs. But it gets complicated just because of how the WRA reallocates. I mean, the WRA has 44 SRF loans right now, and there's probably another 40 coming, you know, over the course of the next 20 years with the facility plan. So I don't know if I answered your question, Blake, or not.
Yeah, I think yes.
Okay. What else on Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District?
And if no other questions, I'd maybe have you go to the Urbandale Windsor Heights one, because while Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District is a pretty steady 5%, Urbandale Windsor Heights is going to show a more significant increase over the first couple of years here because their rates have been so low, at least percentage wise. So Matt, I may have you go through that a little bit.
Yeah. So Urbandale Windsor Heights District, you know, we just built this model. I just presented it to the trustees for the first time this January. And so they haven't increased their rates, I don't think, back to 2016, 2017. And you can see their rates are really low, whereas Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District was like $23, $24. Urbandale Windsor Heights is at like $19, you know. And so people see a 25% rate increase and it's just like, wow, that's a lot. And it is a lot, but you know, they're really trying to get caught up for the last 8 years of not raising rates. And they're not in a terrible position, but their coverage is really a lot tighter in this budget year. And so we're trying to kind of stay ahead of it. And then their cash position is strong, but it's not as strong. Whereas, you know, $1.8 million seems like a lot, but when you spend, you know, capital projects are expensive and the allocations are big. The debt payment is $400,000. So you could eat through $1.8 million pretty quick. You know, the WRA payment for the district, the Windsor Heights district is going to be $960,000 this year. You know, so that just kind of goes to show, and that's projected to more than double over the planning horizon, which most of that, you know, is the debt going from 400 to 1.1 million. And then when we see, you know, the flows increased 4.5%, you know, you're picking up 4.5% on all of those 44 loans that are existing. So that stuff really compounds year over year. So we are showing some pretty significant increases just to get the rates back, what I would call kind of normalized. And so, you know, we update these annually because flows are really hard to predict. So we will continue to work with the Urbandale Windsor Heights district to figure out, you know, they've got a loan that they did as an SRF loan, as a revenue note, that it's at 2%, but because of some of the coverage dynamics, it probably makes sense to pay that off Whereas the geo debt doesn't count against your revenue coverage. So it's just the math is a little bit different. So, certainly more pressure here, but you come back and it's, they're the lowest bill out of everybody. Their property taxes are a little bit higher at 40 cents as opposed to the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District was at 21 cents per thousand. So they do have a higher property tax burden in the Urbandale Windsor Heights District than they do in Urbandale Sanitary Sewer. And then, they don't have a debt service levy, but they use that to fund some of their things. And so part of it is just, they're paying more with property taxes as opposed to Urbandale Sanitary Sewer is paying more with the sewer rates. And so,
one comment I'd just make on this in addition, I know one of the models Matt had put together for the district and it's considering is the first year having 40% increase instead of the 25% increase, which then allowed for smaller increases going forward. And it's something I know the trustees are considering. I mean, the question is, when we're going from $4, any sort of increase, if we raise it $1 to raise, that's a 25% increase. So because we start with such a low denominator, our percent of increase appears more significant than looking at the actual dollars raised or gained because of where our rates currently sit. So I know the trustees are trying to weigh and manage how best to do that. And Matt and his group with PFM is helping provide the information for them to be able to look at those and to try to make good decisions based on the math and trying to keep up with the potential increases for the WRA debt coming up.
So I can keep sharing. I can answer more questions, or I can turn it over. I don't know who's up next, but
I think that was probably about it. Was anybody else going to present on anything?
I think that's all we had, unless you had other questions or any of the council members had other questions. We'd be happy to answer or try to answer any of those that you may have.
All right. Any further questions from the council?
I guess one question I have here is, since it's spiking up mainly because of projects and things that need to be done, is that just because of like the research has finally been compiled and now we know what is needed to take care of old items and future growth? Or I'm just trying to figure out if, like, is it because we did a plan, or is it because there was not as much maintenance done in the past?
No,
Like
it's because
I guess my thought in regard to that, a lot of it from our individual sewer districts, and I think Scott was going to jump in, obviously. The WRA is a huge part, and especially of the Urbandale Windsor Heights District budget. And so when you look at, and it's going to more than double on that debt services you saw in that line that Matt had presented over the next 5 years. For the Urbandale Windsor Heights District to try to keep up with the changes that are now being proposed in the new plans that have been approved at the WRA. From a district perspective, that's where they came from. I know Scott can talk about it. They've been looking at and trying to figure out how this WRA thing can work on a much larger scale.
Yeah, so the facility plans are exactly what you said. They are for both, for rehab and for growth. So we've gone out to all the communities and asked them, what does their population projections look like for the next 10, 20, 30 years? And that we're ready for that. And even though there's a lot of things going on at the legislative level with property taxes and caps like that concern everybody as well as us, if you tell me that the growth is going to stop in the metro, then we can completely pivot and do something else. But I don't think that's realistic. There's projections saying that right now we serve about 550,000 people, and they're saying in 30 years that could be 1 million. And if that's the case, we need to, continue to grow incrementally, or we're not going to be ready when those people show up, or if major businesses show up, or manufacturing, or whatever happens. So It's twofold. It's both that we're rehabbing things, but then also we're looking for that growth as well. So it's and that's what we project, working with, you know, the communities and their growth projections on this is what we're going to need. And then also, as like I said, the EPA gets more stringent. We don't know what the PFAS thing means. We don't know. There is a, you know, right now we land apply our biosolids to farm fields. If for some reason they determine that we can't do that anymore, we're going to have a major project on incineration of our biosolids or some other way to get rid of it. So we continue to try to stay focused and stay on top of what the regulators and what the legislators, both at the state level and at the federal level, are going to do, and stay on top of it. So it's expensive, just like the waterworks. They have a big capital improvement program as well. That's another. And I speak a lot with Ted Corrigan, the CEO of Des Moines Waterworks, and they have the same issues. They have a big capital improvement program as well to supply the water that we all need. And then obviously you got to get rid of that water as well. So I wish I had a rosier picture, but I don't. We just got to be ready. And we continue to evaluate this every year. You know, we look at projects. Is this project really needed? If it's not, we can push it back and continually. That's what we did with the joint trunk project. We continue to push that project back until we can't push it back anymore because now it's needed. And we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to evaluate because we know it puts burden on the communities and their ratepayers.
Appreciate that.
All right. Anything further? Well, thank you, everybody, for participating today and providing the information. That was great information on everything. Thanks, Scott. Thanks to Paul and Matt for the Sanitary Sewer District. And we are at the end of our agenda. It's 1 o'clock, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.